While the host of Sisters in Arms have taken every precaution to ensure that the content of this program is both current and accurate, errors can occur. The host assumed no responsibility or liability for any errors or omission in the content of this program.
The information contained in this program is provided on an as-is basis with no guarantee of completeness or accuracy. The opinions of the guests are not necessarily the same as the hosts.
Welcome to Sisters in Arms. I'm Carrie Ann Alclair.
And I'm Renee Gagne. Together we serve as a Second Amendment resource for the communities of Massachusetts.
Awesome. So today's episode, we have a special guest here to talk about mental health. Her name is Karen Ellery-Jones.
Hello.
And you are the Assistant Director for the Samaritans on Cape Cod and the Islands.
That's correct.
And how long have you been doing that?
I have been the Assistant Director for 7 years in July.
Awesome. Would you like to explain? I have your mission here, but I think it would be better coming from you.
Okay, we are a suicide prevention nonprofit. That's what we do. We have our crisis lines and we educate, do community outreach. We do a lot of work to raise awareness of suicide.
Yeah, I was looking at your website. It's really awesome.
Yeah.
So is the Samaritans just in the Cape Islands? Or
No. Samaritans, there's Boston Samaritans, there's the Cape and Island Samaritans, there's South Coast, there's Merrimack. I think we've got 5.
Okay, all right. That's what I was trying to figure out. Oh, so that's good. So
Right.
You're all over the place.
Yes, we are all over the place.
That's
In Massachusetts.
Wow, that's
Rhode
great.
Island, there's one as well, in New
there
York.
is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Nice. And then
Nice.
if you would go over to England, you would find a Samaritans just about on every corner.
Nice. That's awesome.
And you're actually on call now, so
Yes,
if
I
your
am.
phone rings.
I'm hoping it does it, yes.
Yeah. So we actually met you when we went to the listening tour in Barnstable.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a listening tour that was kicked off by Representative Michael Day, and he is the 31st Middlesex District Representative. And we actually have a video to show the introduction of that.
Hi, I'm State Representative Michael Day from the 31st Middlesex District. We're here tonight at Cape Cod Community College having a community discussion on the intersection between suicide, mental health, and gun safety.
I think that kind of explains a little bit more, but I know this is one out of many, and he's going to be doing a lot more down the road. We're eager to find out some more dates. I'm not sure if it's going to be on the same topic or not, but I think it is.
Different topics. So what I pulled out of that, I watched it a whole bunch of times. So it's going to have different topics all over Massachusetts, and it's going to be gun related. So this first kickoff one was about mental health because it's that important.
Yeah, suicide prevention.
Yeah.
So I don't think people realize how important it is until it's affected, until they're affected, or to something's affecting them or their lives or the lifestyles. So I think it was really awesome to be able to meet you, and we chatted. We had a little Zoom meeting a couple of weeks ago, so that was great.
And it was important to us because we have the gun culture education, and not everyone on the panel did. And we don't have mental health education to what we wish we had. So when we come together and we meet and we share that, it's very powerful. And I feel like we are able to help the communities better and have deeper conversations when you can mix the two together.
Right.
I so agree with that, Renee. We tend to sort of stick in our little silos because we're comfortable there.
Right.
But when we do that, we don't tend to reach out to other people.
Right.
As you all know, during our Zoom conversation, I come from a gun family. There were more guns in our house than family members, all registered, I will say, says my dad. But I'm not immersed in the gun culture.
Right.
And I didn't think it was really important, to be honest with you. I just thought, okay, guns, you know what? I don't really like them. A little scared of them. I'm still going to talk about suicide prevention. I don't necessarily understand the need to carry a gun. But I don't have to. What I have to understand is how to protect people who do carry and how to prevent suicides. It was such an eye-opening conversation with you two. And I always thought I was culturally sensitive, but you know what? I'm not in all areas. So it's been a joy to learn that, yes, you know what? These gals have guns, and they're not scary, and you know, and
We're going to get you to the range, Karen.
Yeah.
I know,
You're
I
gonna
know.
love it.
And you know
but
what?
it's so important
It
to
is.
sort of like
It
pull
really
away
is.
from that and say, okay, we're going to disagree on something, but where can we come together?
Absolutely. Find that common.
Exactly. Find the common ground, and then you work out from there.
Right.
Correct.
So
Because we
I
all want to be safe.
exactly
And we all,
right. Yep. So I was just so excited. It was like we were meant to come together.
It was,
You know?
because
Yeah.
people, and it's funny because I couldn't really explain, they're like, well, if you're suicidal or you're feeling sad or whatever, you shouldn't have guns. And I'm like, okay, hold on a second. Let's back up and let's use me as an example.
Right, yeah.
Here I am, you know, the state leader for the DC project, you know, on Women of America. We do classes regularly. It's part of our livelihood, but at the same time, we volunteer and it's a passion of ours.
Right.
So if I, God forbid, had a horrible traumatic event happen and I was going through a funk and someone red flagged me or took all my guns away and said, you can never have those back, I would be absolutely devastated.
Right.
When I did get better and when I finally got the help I needed, all of that was stripped away from me and now
Right.
I don't have it back.
Right.
That's absolutely devastating, and I think that is a fear for a lot of gun owners because they don't know where to go.
And it's a
so-
valid fear.
It is, it
Even though
is.
I don't understand it, it's important to you.
Right.
And that's where I think there's a lot of, there's like that big chasm between people who have guns and people who do not have guns.
Right.
So when we went to the listening tour, that first kickoff meeting, already we feel like we're on the defense, right? We're walking in, it's about guns. We have a new governor now. What's coming down the pike? Are they setting us up for something? Like that's what goes
Right,
on,
yeah.
because historically, you know, we have so many laws on the books, and they just keep growing and growing. Massachusetts gun law, you know, is this thick. So
And we're actually going to a class, and the book is literally
yeah.
like,
So, you know, that's what we're thinking.
Yeah.
And people that aren't in the gun community don't think like that because they're not submersed in it, right?
Right, exactly. We're
So-
in those silos
Right,
because
so-
we tend to, you know, coalesce around people who are like us.
Right.
right.
Gun
So-
rights, book clubs,
Right.
garden
Exactly.
clubs, etc.
Right.
And I
Exactly.
think it's awesome because I was so excited to actually have that Zoom meeting because I'm like, oh my God, finally we're like stepping into
Right, exactly,
having a
yeah.
real conversation, and then you're willing to have this conversation
Yeah.
with us, and that's what we
And
want.
I'll say
you know?
it too for you as well to reach out, because sometimes gun owners will say, I'm not talking to you because you're going to take away my gun, you know, or so you two are a breath of fresh air.
Aw.
Oh, thank
So
you.
we can do good work together.
That,
Very
absolutely,
excited.
and that's why we're so excited. So at the end of of that meeting, we parked ourselves by the door because we wanted, as everyone to come out, we wanted them to see us as a resource. You know, we are the experts,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So just like we need you to teach us, I feel like there's that back and forth that
Exactly.
can benefit both of us.
Exactly.
Did you say you went to, you did a seminar or some education
I did.
for the
I did
veterans?
a day-long course at William James College, and it was basically suicide prevention for veterans using counseling on access to lethal means. And I think, you know, I had an awful week at work. Like, I don't want to go. I'm just exhausted. I was hoping for a snowstorm. And thank God it didn't snow because I learned so much. And this is where I learned that as a veteran, guns to them mean life. Right? They protect their lives. And I really didn't, I've been in this field for 7 years. I didn't even put the pieces together.
No, it's something that they've relied on.
Exactly. So, you know, that you have to become familiar with the vernacular, and you have to be able to talk to them using sensitive language and understanding the importance of that gun.
Right.
And it was terrific. 2 vets taught the course,
That's great.
which was fabulous.
I wish we were there.
Oh, I know. That would have been really.
They are having another one, and
Oh,
I can
they
fill you in
I would
on
love
the
it.
details. You will just love it.
Yeah, I would love
And
to.
they did explain Massachusetts gun law. They did a short overview, and I was sitting there thinking, how? It just went over my head. There were so many.
Yeah, and those are probably
rules.
just this much of them,
Exactly.
right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then everybody interprets it different sometimes
Right,
too.
yes,
You're like,
yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
so it could mean this, or
Yeah.
it could mean that.
It's very convoluted.
It is. It is, and that's typical lawyering, right?
Right. Oh yeah. Sometimes I think it's done on purpose.
Yeah.
But, so we were talking earlier about like the signs, because I was saying stages, but that's not really the right term. So there's signs to where people get to that point of crisis mode.
Right. So there's lots of different theories of suicide, but to sort of like strip it down, if you had someone who you were friends with and you noticed that they were depressed and they were isolating themselves and they started saying things like, I wish I were dead, or life, you'd be better off without me. Those are some warning signs. Now, we all have said, oh my God, I'm going to kill myself. I just did that. That's different, right? Because we've all said things like that. They will tend to pull away. They may start giving things away.
Oh,
right?
Yes.
We've had cases where people will bring their beloved pet to a shelter in preparation for ending their life. They may start giving away vases or cars. There's little tiny hints.
Or calling family members they haven't talked to in a while.
Exactly, that's right, yeah. And we know that isolation and loneliness are 2 risk factors for depression. Depression is a risk for suicide, but not everyone who is depressed will become suicidal.
Right.
To actually take your own life is very, very hard. You have to sort of override these innate biological drive to survive.
Right, yeah.
And I always, when I teach the class, I always say, when you were young, did you ever try to like punch yourself? I don't know, maybe I hung around with crazy kids. I don't know.
Did you have brothers?
No, I didn't, but I had brothers all over the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And you really can't, it's hard
Right.
to hurt yourself
Yeah.
because we are programmed
Right.
to live.
Right.
So you have to strip all that away.
It's like holding your breath. You
Right,
can't hold your
exactly,
breath.
that's right.
If
The will
eventually your
to
body's gonna be
survive,
like, "No, you're
exactly.
breathing."
Says, right, yeah.
Yeah.
So there are little signs to be aware of.
And then how would somebody approach the situation? Because if it's hard, because I think it's also a taboo, like, oh, don't tell anybody I'm having this moment. Don't tell anybody that I tried to commit suicide. Don't tell. It's like this big thing.
Right.
People are ashamed of it, and they shouldn't be ashamed of it.
There is a huge stigma, of course, over mental health and particularly suicide. So if I were noticing someone who is very depressed, isolated, lonely, started saying things, I'm a burden, they have no hope, everything is kind of just gone, I would say to them, I notice that you've been down, you're depressed, and I'm worried about you.
Right.
Are you feeling suicidal? Because sometimes people feel this way when they feel that there's no hope.
Right.
And that's a hard question to ask. Are you feeling
just gonna say it,
suicidal?
right.
I say it all the time now that there's no stigma attached at all.
Right.
But it's really important to be direct and say that. We have found that most of the time when you ask that question, if they are feeling that way, they're really grateful that finally someone noticed how much pain they're
Someone's
in.
listening.
Right.
Someone's
Right,
listening.
someone is actually going to listen to them.
Yeah, so how do you direct somebody? I mean, most of the times I would imagine that people contact you, but how, on the other side, if you're contacting them, what's the next approach for somebody? Like, okay, are you feeling suicide? Let's say yes. Let's say they say yes. I feel like I'm just not in a good place.
Right.
I don't want to be here anymore.
Right. You say, thank you for sharing that with me. I know it's really hard. I love you. I care for you. I want you to live. Let's figure out how we can get you there. Hug them. Do whatever. Just kind of feed off of what they are. And what you would do is saying, okay, you can identify coping strategies, right? Like, have you ever been in this situation before?
Right.
If they say yes, okay, what helped you get through this?
Right.
Because sometimes when people are suicidal, they go through something called cognitive constriction, where it just sort of gets where they can't see any hope, they can't see any options. So
Like
your job
suffocating.
exactly is to sort of like pry that aperture open a bit and say, well, you said that you were suicidal and your aunt helped you. How about we call your aunt? Or how about we call your daughter? Or how about we go out and take a walk? You can also say, how about we call the emergency services provider,
Right.
right, and get them on the phone. They can do a risk assessment with them. They can come to the house.
Okay, yeah.
And do a
I
risk
think,
assessment,
I think
which
that's great, because a lot of people don't want to go to the ER.
Right, yes.
And they don't want to be sectioned, and they're afraid of that
Yes.
moment.
That is, going to the ER is the last resort, because we know you are boarded there for days. You are seeing people do come in to see you, but it's very traumatic. And I'll tell you that a lot of people who call into our crisis line, they're hesitant to give much information because they'll say, I don't want the police to come.
Right.
I don't want to be into the ER.
Right.
And we do everything possible on our end to prevent that
Right.
by getting in touch with the ESPs. And also reminding them if they have other people who can come over to their house. But there's also walk-in clinics that you can go to.
I love that. I didn't know that.
Yes. You can go, I know, for example, Bay Cove is the ESP for Cape and the Islands. And they have a walk-in clinic in Hyannis that's open 7 days a week that you can go in. Best to call apparently ahead of time and say, I'm coming in, but they can do a risk assessment right then and there.
I think that's great.
Right.
Yeah, you sent us a bunch of awesome
which is
information, too.
wonderful. And the statewide ESP number is great because anyone can use that number.
Is that the 988?
It's nope. That's it's the 877-382-1609 number.
And you know what? Now that we're on that subject, I actually printed the resources, but I also gave it to Kim to show on her show
perfect.
as well.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we're going to show that real quick. There's 2 pages. Definitely take a picture of this if you can on your TV. Save it and put it aside, because you never know if you're going to need it or someone that you love is going to need it.
Right,
So,
and that's a great listing of all numbers that you can call if you're in distress or need additional help. But getting back to the ESP numbers, that you plug in your zip code and you're routed to the ESP
that's great.
who covers that region.
Oh, that's awesome.
And again, they can come to your house, they can do
I
telephone.
wonder if there's anyone around here in this side of Mass.
Oh, it's broken up into different regions.
Oh, really? Oh,
Right,
that's
yeah,
good.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
And then there's a behavioral health helpline as well.
Oh, wow.
That just came out in January, and that's where you can call. That's 24/7. You can call, you can text, you can chat.
That's great.
And again, they will stay on the line until you're hooked up
Oh, that's
with
awesome.
either a therapist, or they will do a mobile crisis unit. So I think over my 7 years of being in this field, I have seen remarkable strides
That's
in
great.
opening up mental health services. Is it perfect? No. It's a good start.
Right. Now, if somebody did, like, let's say somebody came mobile, they came to the house or whatever, and then you realize that, okay, they need something, they need to go somewhere.
Right.
And I know that right now there's such a lack of beds, there's such a lack of clinicians, it seems like there's not enough.
Right.
So what happens at that point?
It all depends on the circumstance. I know that some providers do have short-term beds, but again, trying to find a bed we need more beds.
Right.
Right.
A lot of times you can de-escalate them and then move them to an outpatient resource.
Right.
There's lots of different areas that you can go into.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. But again, no one wants to go. The idea of all these programs are to keep people away from the emergency room.
Right.
Right. As a nurse, I can definitely attest to that, because just going down, walking through the ER, you see people in the hallways.
Yeah.
And you know that they're the mental health patients because they have the person sitting there with a little clipboard, like every 15 minutes, documenting on their behavior. And, so
It's so sad.
it is tough. It is really tough. And there's no place for them to go. Nobody has beds. So they're sitting in the hallway in the ER.
Yep.
Right, and even getting a therapist. We hear a lot of our callers saying, I called and it's a 6-month wait, it's a 3-month
And
wait.
that's not acceptable.
No,
it's like
it's
you need
not.
help now.
Right.
No,
Right.
no.
Right.
I think that the state has to do
Something.
loan forgiveness if you go into therapy and make it a real priority
Yeah.
to get more people out there.
Or give initiatives to go into that.
Exactly. That's right.
And
Yeah.
I know that, you know, just going, depending on your insurance, the copay can be extensive.
Oh, yeah.
And if you can't afford it,
Right.
you're going to stop
Right.
because you got to put food on the table for your child.
Right.
So
My
now you have
health
to make
insurance last year, I had to reach my deductible first before, and then have a copay. I didn't, thankfully, have to use it, but the copay was like $60. So I had to
right.
do $3,000 in deductible, and then,
Yeah.
and how is that?
How
That's
is
not
that?
acceptable.
Right. No.
Not at all.
So I think this is a great conversation because, you know, hopefully someone's going to hear this too and be like, oh, wow, I never realized that. And it's an eye-opener. It really, truly is an eye-opener.
Right. And again, they can also, we talked about the 988, that's the national 3-digit number for suicide and substance use. That goes to centers, over 200 centers across the United States.
Wow. So if they call 988, that,
Depending on where they're located, if you're somewhere on the Cape, you're going to get routed to the Cape Samaritans.
that's awesome.
And we're here 24/7 to listen. And sometimes that's all people need.
I was just going to
It's
say that.
just, even before they reach that part, we'll be on the phone with someone for 45 minutes, and after they say, thank you. You listened.
Right.
You didn't judge.
Right, and I think that's, and like you said earlier, it's just so many people are afraid of people knowing.
Right, yes.
They're going through something.
Exactly, yeah.
Because then because some people judge.
Right, yeah.
Well,
you
some
shouldn't-
people are mandated reporters too.
Right, and
Right.
we're not mandated reporters, so
Right.
you can tell us anything,
Right.
and we just sit there
Right.
and listen.
Because I have had loved ones say to me that they were, you know, having situations, and they've come right out and said, I'm afraid of what to say to you because you're a mandated
Right.
reporter as a nurse.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's tough. It's really tough, but listening is definitely the
Yeah.
key. And you taught me something that was so valuable. The time that you're having these suicidal thoughts, it can be a matter of minutes, 10 minutes, less than that.
Yeah,
Yep.
I didn't realize
So
that.
that is
Right.
really important when it comes to the art of listening, because if you can just intercept that, you
They
save
might,
somebody.
they might not think about that again. They're
Right,
like, oh my
and-
God, why am I thinking this? Why did I think that last night?
Right,
Thank
and
God
it's
you called
interesting
me.
because
Thank God I called you.
they did a study about people who survived suicide attempts, and a majority were between 10 and 20 minutes where they
Wow.
thought and they acted, which is why it's so important when you have a firearm in the home that it is safely stored, particularly if you have someone
Right.
in the house who's experiencing a mental
Right.
health crisis.
And-
Because that'll save a life.
Absolutely. And something I learned from Walk the Talk America, we had Mike Sedini on, and I think we introduced you to that
Yes,
organization too. On his website, there were a lot of different options of ways that you can help, and one was put pictures of the loved ones next to the guns in the safe. Because they could be stored properly, but it could be the gun owner who has access to that is having the problem.
Exactly.
Right.
So by putting pictures of their children, their dog, whatever, you know, it might snap them, like you
Right.
said, open that aperture
Yeah.
and just get through that crisis.
Right.
And we talked about this too, you know, what are some things you can do for gun owners to get the guns away that they're going to agree with? Because a lot of times, like we talked about, it's part of them.
Right,
They don't want to
exactly.
give them away. They're afraid they're never going to get them back. But if you remove a piece, like maybe a cylinder from a revolver, you can give that piece to anybody. It doesn't have to be a
Right.
licensed gun owner, right? So that's wonderful because people don't think of that. They're like, well, I have to give my guns to a licensed gun owner. Well, not if you just give a piece.
Right.
If you
Right,
give a
and it
slide
makes the
or
gun
a bolt.
inoperable.
Right, and it's inoperable.
And
right.
I think it's so important, so if you are, you know, a firearm owner and you're listening to this show, there are so many resources out there that can help you, so you don't need to suffer in silence, you know. Don't be afraid to talk to your friend and find out what's going on. And, you know, like if you have somebody in the house that, let's say both of you have a firearm in the house and one person is going through something, can change the lock. Take them out of the house temporarily.
right.
Have a conversation.
Have
Get them
that,
help.
have that conversation
Yeah.
and go to a fellow gun owner and say, hey, you know what, I'm feeling, you know, I'm afraid.
Right.
Can you help?
Right.
And I love that idea of removing parts of the gun.
Yeah.
Right.
And you don't have to be a licensed carrier, from what I believe, to take a piece.
No, you can just take a piece
Right.
of it.
And
Right.
so now
And
you're
that
not
piece
worried
can
about
save a life.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. So, I mean,
Right.
having these conversations, who knew, right?
I know, exactly, yeah.
But that's where it's so important to bridge that gap
Absolutely.
between not a gun owner and someone who's
Right.
well versed and
Exactly.
an expert in the field.
Right.
And
We need each other.
Yes, exactly.
It is so true. And I think that, again, meeting you and going to that full day training changed my whole perspective.
I love that.
I
And
love it.
that's what this is all about.
Right.
We
Yep.
volunteer our time to make those connections, right?
And I'm looking forward to working with you and trying to.
So you're going to get me on that range, aren't
Oh
you?
yeah, girl, we are.
I told you I have shot and I'm pretty good.
I think it's awesome.
But
So-
I'm ready to, yeah.
Yeah, so we're
gonna be
running
so
out of
fun.
time, but I wanted to give the floor back to you again. Is there anything that you want to say to our listeners about what we can do to help if there is somebody out there that needs help besides
I w-
988?
I would say don't be afraid to ask. If you care about someone, just sort of throw the stigma away and say, I'm worried about you, I'm scared, I want to help.
Right.
And give them a hug. And I think we're all a community. We have to look out for one another.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's really important. And if they need help, there are resources available.
Right.
And you just have to know them.
Yeah, and maybe we can throw that resource page up again towards the end of the show so we can.
And even if you call
Get a chance.
988, we can give you the resources too.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And go online.
Do we
as
have
well.
time to pop that picture up?
Yep,
Yeah?
she just did.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
So the picture that we're showing now is a picture of the DC project. We went and we repped the DC project, and that's how we met you, and it's great. And we have Representative Steve Xeris.
Oh, yep, I know. I love Steve.
He is so fun.
He is.
And he's such a helper. My
Yeah.
gosh, what do you need, Renee? What do you need? You
That's
know,
awesome.
it's people like this
Yep.
that
he
we
is,
need.
Steve is a great advocate for mental health
Yeah,
and
that's
supporting
awesome.
the Samaritans. He's wonderful.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. But we're out of time. I can't thank you enough.
this is too
I know
short.
it's too short, but thank you for joining us.
Oh,
This
you're
is
welcome.
and
My
we'll have
pleasure.
to have you back on again because I think this is such an important topic. So
Well, maybe we'll get you in Sandwich.
yeah, I like
should.
that. So if you have any questions or comments about the show, or you just are wanting to get some more information, please reach out to us, sistersinarms2022@gmail.com. Until next time,
Stay safe and
stay vigilant.
Stay vigilant.
Thank you. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Karen. Thank you.